I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.
So let's talk about what we're going to put into the Road Glide. So I'm super jacked. If you've been watching my videos, you know I just put some lowers onto the Road Glide, and I was trying to figure out like what speakers I want to put into those speaker pods. And the guys at Cerwin Vega reached out to me and they said, "Hey Mike, we'd like to help you with how we're doing." And super jacked about it. I said, "Yeah, of course, right? Like that's cool. Like that's timely." So they sent out speakers, an amp, and a controller, and let's talk a little bit about each of these products before we go through how we're going to connect it and how we're going to mount stuff. So let's start with these speakers. So we're going to do 4 of the Cerwin Vega SM65 F4 Stroker series speakers. So these are marine grade speakers, and you know, just for spec's sake, these things run at 125 watts RMS with a 250 watt max. They've got a flush mount design, so that's really helpful, you know, including the front end. So like one of the things I found, because I was doing research on trying to find some marine grade speakers, is a lot of guys out there, a lot of the vendors, they have like these big plastic grills because they're mainly made for like boats or something. And it was really hard to find something where I wasn't going to have a cover in the way of the speaker cover for the fairing, the lower, and a cover for the speaker cover on the upper fairing, because that's, you know, pretty low. It doesn't give a lot of room. All right, let's talk about what we're going to power these speakers up with. So we're going to use the Cerwin Vega B54 4-channel amplifier. So just a couple of specs on this. This is a 600 watt RMS amplifier. It's got a peak of 1200 watts, but you know, when you're running this thing consistently, you're looking at 600 watts. And this lines up perfectly for these speakers because these being 125 watts RMS in a 4-channel configuration, that means that this thing's going to be doing 150 watts per channel RMS. All right, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to use to install this equipment. So for our wiring kit of the amplifier, we're going to use Stinger's Harley-Davidson kit. So this has got all of the kind of stock plugs. So it's almost a plug and play setup. And I say almost only because you do still have, like, they've done it for you, but you still have, you know, terminations that are a little bit different. So it's not like you just put this in the middle. I would liken it to almost like a turbo kit, right? In a car. It's not exactly like that, but it's pretty darn close. So that, now to mount the amp underneath the deck that's on the Road Glide, what we're going to do is use the Saddle Tramp amplifier rack. And this is something I found off of eBay. I want to say it was like 50 bucks or something like that. But it's pre-drilled for holes to match up with a variety of amplifiers. Now I'll tell you that it doesn't mean it's going to line up with every single amplifier that's out there, but it's metal, so you can drill it if you need to. But what's nice is you may be able to line things up right away and not have to worry about it until later. So that's what we're going to use to do this setup. We're going to go ahead and get cracking, get this thing in. But before we do that, I want to take a test or capture a test of what the sound is like today. Same song, same volume level. We'll measure that out, and then we'll revisit it with the amplifier and the speakers in place and see what it sounds like post installation. All right, guys, so before we do anything, before we break down the fairing and all that kind of stuff, what I wanted to do is do a quick before test. And what we're going to use is a decibel meter here. So I'm just kind of putting it on the seat, on the passenger pillion. And when we essentially do the same test again after the install, we'll put it in the same exact place. And to kind of do like a, I don't know, experiment or whatever, to try to be, you know, as fair about this as possible, what we're going to use is some copyright-free music from YouTube. I'm going to use this rock song that I found. It sounds really clear, real crisp. We'll measure it. I've got the volume set at 7. I don't know, pills or whatever you want to call them. They're like the little hash markers there. So I've got that set. So 7 there. This song, we're going to measure it out, and then we'll be able to retest after we do the install of the other speakers, the amplifier, and use the exact same song with the exact same volume setting. And 10 seconds. Okay, so that 10 seconds of sound got us up to a max of 105.2 decibels. So that is our starting point. And yeah, we'll get started here. So 105.2, that's where we're at. Okay, so I just want to share, like, I am not going to cover the removal of the fairing and all of that stuff. There are other videos to do that. What I really want to make sure we've honed in on is the work to install the amplifier, the speakers, all that kind of good stuff, because there is a little bit to that, and I don't want to take up that additional time just for a fairing part of it. Where we are going to run into some, I don't want to say issues or troubles, but we're going to actually get into the modification piece of this, is in the upper speaker pods, because these have larger magnets. We're going to have to mold or essentially heat up the plastic to allow for that bigger magnet to fit in, and I'll show you once we get there. And there's 2 ways to kind of skin this cat, and I'll tell you the way that I'm doing it and then the way other people do it. Totally up to you, like which way you'd like to go. And yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into this. Let me get this. So this amp rack is gonna go in under there, and I don't know if you can quite see that, but there are holes. Let's see if I can get a light in there for you guys. So that hole there above the plastic retaining clip thing, and that hole up there, that is where our bolts are going to pass through for the amplifier rack. So I'm going to go ahead. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put the so I've got the amp mounted to the rack, and the way I have this set up, for mine at least, is the output of the amplifier is on this side along with the power wires, and then the input is on this side along with the fine adjustments. I want to be able to access those fine adjustments easily. So in my particular case, I'm going to put it in that way, so that way these are facing outwards and I can get to them. Because once that stereo is in, that hole is blocked, so you're not going to be able to access your stuff. So just make sure you kind of think that through, because it's really easy to get ahead of yourself. Put something in and you go like, oh man, like I got to do it differently. So let's go ahead and put this in, and we'll get it tacked up with some of the bolts. Okay, so amplifier wire installation. What I find is the best way to get this, and it's because it's not so hard to remove the gas tank, is to run it through the stock cable channel, trough, wire, whatever you want to call it. You remove your gas tank, it's 4 bolts, and you got your vent lines and then a plug. But get that out of the way, and you can access this stuff pretty easily. Make sure you cover up your lowers when you do that, because the bolts are pretty close to it, and if you're using an extension, you don't want to scratch your stuff. But so you just run it through here. So that's what I did with the power and the ground. They're connected now. I have this ginormous inline fuse deal. I don't have my fuse in there right now because I don't want it to be energized. And then at the same time, I'm just going to take the opportunity. If you don't have this, you don't have to worry about it, but this is going to be my power line to power up the LED control module. So I do need 12 volt power for that, and I'll be running that there. But basically all you're going to do is follow the stock cabling that goes up through here, and it will come out the front section right behind the headlight. So now I got my wires there. The other wire you need to run for your amplifier is the remote power wire. So for that, they tell you to just tap into your cigarette lighter because it comes on and goes off with your switch. So it's not a constant power. The cable that comes in the kit has a secondary connector, but you can choose to use it, not to use it, whatever you want. I've got mine covered up for safety right now, just in case I need to power things up or whatever. I don't want it to touch anything. And then you just want to fish that up. So I've got that fished up now here, so that way I can go ahead and get it into the amplifier once we got the amplifier in place. And then I've also run my speaker wires for the lowers, so everything's kind of just semi-tacked or whatever. And yeah, so that's the amp wire installation. All right, so I want to cover how I routed the wiring for the lowers. And the way I did that is with inside the pod itself, there's like a port there. I don't know if you can see it, but essentially that goes down and underneath here. So there's a cover that sits there. But that allowed me to run the wiring down and then along the frame of the bike to the neck. Okay, so let's talk about these speaker pods. So I've got these pulled off of the Road Glide, and when you try to put your speaker in, like I said, it's got a large magnet, and what it does is it hits up against this. This is the outer side of the pod, and basically it kind of hits in this little channel area. So let me see if I can get a good angle on it. And so watching other folks to see what they've done, they usually take one of two approaches. They either heat up the plastic and reshape it, or they cut it. Both work. It's really going to be dependent on you and what you're willing to do. Okay, and so what I mean by that is, if you cut this, just know you're going to have to reseal it, and that means you're going to have to get some, like, I don't know, sound deadening tape or something like that to cover it up. I mean, I'm sure you could do it with like duct tape or whatever. These things are not designed to be optimal for sound, so just know that up front. You're not like gonna change necessarily the output. So for that reason though is why I chose, or I'm choosing, to heat the plastic up and reshape it. And before I showed you this, I wanted to take a run at it, because again, I haven't done this before. So you know, I wanted to see what it was going to be like, what it's going to take, and it allows me to really kind of call out like where are the areas, right? So I took a speaker, sat it in, found kind of where it hit. I see this area here, so speakers are going to vary. So where mine is exactly is going to differ from yours. And then there's this like little, I don't know what you want to call it, like a fin or whatever. So I found if you heat that up, it easily folds down, but that does get in the way a little bit. But really, it's just kind of putting a little bit of pressure to get this out. Now, because it was my first attempt, it's not pretty. I would imagine that this one's going to come out much better. So here is my first attempt. Now on the outside, it looks like I think Sloth from the Goonies. So not so pretty, right? The inside's even worse. But what I did is heated it up, and I actually used originally, and I think what kind of made this messy is I was trying to use different things to try to push in on this, and what I found that seemed to work better, and unfortunately later, was the head of a hammer, because it gets hot, right? So you want to make sure you can put something there and push down on it. And what's nice is your hammer has a nice good rounded shape, so that allows you to get in there and kind of leverage it to push down and get a little bit smoother look. Now, be careful when you heat this up, and what I mean by that is if you get it too hot, I mean, this thing, it's plastic, right? So like you can push right through it if you wanted to. So just be careful. You want it just hot enough to warp it and not to melt it, right? And so you can see I actually got several times to a point of melting it. So that's my mistake. So learn from my mistake here. I've got at least one pinhole that I can actually see a little bit through. That's easily fixed. So what you do to fix that is you take like a zip tie, a black zip tie, and you take a lighter and you kind of just melt it, and as it drips like a candle, just drip it into those areas, and then it essentially you can smear it with like a popsicle stick or whatever, and that kind of closes up the hole. So this was my first run. Super duper ugly, but the speaker fits, and this should fit just fine. In the fairing, it doesn't stick out like any further than this piece here, so I would imagine it's not gonna, you know, that's not gonna be a problem at all there. So now I'm gonna go ahead and work this one and see how it turns out. But just to kind of show you, and I'm not gonna record the whole series of me waving this thing like it's a wand and I'm Harry Potter or anything like that, but this is just a simple heat gun that I got from Harbor Freight a long time ago. I've got the reducer on so I can really focus my heat in any particular area. The bigger the area to heat, it's like boiling the ocean, right? It's going to take longer for it to get hot enough to get it to where you want it to be. And because this is so specific, I just use the reducer so I can go in and hone in on that stuff and just kind of keep working it. You're going to smell it. Once you start smelling it, it's probably pretty close to being moldable. So if you need to, you know, put your heat gun down, put a little pressure with the hammer, see if it moves. If it doesn't, then heat it up again. You may have to also do kind of like inside, outside, just to kind of get the entire plastic. Because I mean, like, of course the surface is going to get hot first because that's exactly where the heat is blowing on. But you need the entire, you know, the plastic itself to get heated throughout. And it's about, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch thick or so. So it's a little thick. So you may want to just heat out the other side, and that way it gets hotter faster and easier to mold. So that's all I'm going to do. Let's see if I can make this one a little bit prettier than the last. And yeah. Okay, so did this one. It came out just a little bit better looking, and it actually on camera it looks horrible, but it's actually not too bad. Definitely better than the other one. The outside of it has a little bit of a monstrosity there, but again, this is inside of your fairing. Nobody's gonna see it. Personally, I mean, I don't care, right? Again, if you want to do the cutting, that is another method, and it would probably look cleaner. It doesn't distort the plastic or whatever, but it is an option. So now that we have these, oh, one other thing too, there was like a little pin tab thing here on these. I had to cut it off on both because it wasn't allowing the speaker to sit flush against the pod. So just recognize that you're probably gonna have to cut that off. Easy to do with like a razor blade or whatever. Anyhow, so these are now ready to go back on the bike. So we'll go ahead and do that and put the speakers in. And then I added a hole to the bottom of both of these. And what that hole is for the LED wires to come out and go to that controller. So that's a separate deal, but I needed to accommodate those wires as well. So I'll have those coming out. But the regular speaker wires are going to be part of, they're the stock wire, and that comes in through the other half of this that's still on the bike. So let's get these mounted up, let's get the speakers in, and we'll be a step closer to hearing what this thing's going to sound like. All right, so we're going to put the pods back onto the bike. I'm putting my speaker in before I put the pod on, and the reason I'm doing that is just because it's when you go through the front, even with the stock, you kind of gotta like puzzle it around to get it out. So instead of having to deal with that with a heavier speaker, I'll just put it on and then put it all together. It should come in and out. It's the same diameter. I just don't want to have to deal with the yeah, it's off. I'll just make it easier for myself. So very, very simple. I already have my wires connected. I also have my LED wires, which, like I said, we'll do kind of separately from all the music stuff. And oh, zip tie is too big, so I gotta cut my zip tie off, but I'll pull that out, connect my speaker, and then you just put your screws back on, and that should be good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock that out real quick, and we'll take a look at what it looks like with the speaker pod on. All right, so we got this first speaker pod on, speakers in place. I mean, yeah, we should be good to go there. And then just kind of, so you can see, like, that's, you know, from a flush mounting spot. And I've got the speaker grill here just to kind of show it'll close. It's not hitting or anything, and it's not clipping in all the way because the outer fairing's got actually a clip there, but you can see it's got plenty of space, so you're not going to have any issues with clearance, so that's good too. And as you can see it a little bit through there, then that means when we get those LEDs hooked up, it's going to look even that much better. So let's I'm going to go ahead and get the other side done, and that should kind of wrap up getting the speakers run, and then we can do up our amplifier. One of the things I wanted to cover though about these speaker pods, and I forgot to mention that before I closed up the other one, is I created some just some wire connectors, because this stock speaker connection, the positive is a smaller tab than the negative. So what I did is all I did is I created that, cut it a little bit, and then that inserts into the stock connection, and it's protected. It's also all plastic in there anyways, so just know you may have to do that. I'm sure there's probably some kind of adapter wire that you can buy that's already pre-made, but I have this stuff laying around, so I just made my own. So just a heads up, you may have to do that as well. Let's light these things up. So we're going to go ahead and install the LED controller unit. It's a pretty simple setup. What I mean by that is not a whole bunch of wires, technically, right? So it's really 3 wires coming out of the unit. You have your 12-volt power wire, a blue remote wire, kind of like an amp, and a ground. So we'll get those hooked up. Now, it doesn't come with the kit, but I highly recommend anytime you're connecting anything directly to your battery that you add in a fuse. Okay, fuses are our friends. If things go sideways on you and it starts shorting out, having a fuse in place will allow for that power. If there's a heavy draw, the fuse will give out and stop that current from being pulled across. Without something like that, if you did have a huge draw or something like that, it could potentially catch fire, right? So just, you always want to be on the safe side with that. Have a fuse in place. Okay guys, so we've got our amp in now. That's all wired up. We've got our inputs. Now, one of the things I didn't mention, or I think I might have spoke to it a little bit and said I wasn't going to do it, but instead I decided to do it after all, and that was to use the rears, and I wanted to be able to fade after all, so I could adjust the front and lower. I was going to try to do left and right, but the thing is, the bikes don't do left and right, so they only go front and rear. So in order to do that, you have to have your bike flashed, and if you go to the dealership, if you don't talk to the guy who's doing the work himself, make sure you tell whoever you're working with at the desk, the service guys, that you want the, you know, Fosgate flash. So just make it clear, you know, essentially you need them to convey the message to the guy in the back that he's going to flash this thing as if he was installing a Fosgate amp and speakers only, but keeping the stock unit. That's going to give him the information he needs to know, oh, I need to flatten out that EQ. Because if you don't, you never know what you're going to get. So anyhow, that was a long story short, or that was a short story long, whatever. I don't know. Anyhow, we've got it all hooked up. I've got the ability now. So my rear, or the rear fade is for the lowers, and then the uppers are on the front, just so I can adjust them because they're going to be loud, right? But I don't want them to be unbalanced, right? So I want to make it to where I can balance them. So I'm going to have to feed a little bit more juice to the lowers just because they're not in my face like the uppers are. So I want to make sure I just bring that up. Take time, do a clean job on your wiring. Oh, actually, okay. So just make sure you do a clean job on your wiring. You want to make sure that this area is nice and clear, so when you put your headlight back in, it's not in the way, okay? The LED controller is off to the right, so that kind of stays out of that way. But yeah, so, and use zip ties, make sure you do that. Now, just kind of going back to the rear. So my bike, it's a standard. There's the plug there, and depending on where you look or whatever, you're going to see people saying pink wires, they're going to say purple and green wires. Mine are all 4 blue. One is blue black, one is blue red, or orange, depends on what color you see. One is all blue, and one is blue gray. So your blue and your blue red, those are your two positives, and then your blue black and your blue gray are your two negatives. So that's how you would wire that up. If you were doing like saddlebags or something like that for your speakers, then you would have to run speaker wire to the front to here because your bike didn't come with that, right? But that is the plug there. So, and it's like clipped with one of these guys. Oh, there you go. One of these guys to your headlight. So if you're looking for it, that's the one. So now at this point, I've already made my adjustments. Your adjustments need to be done based on your amplifier and your listening preferences. So we can go ahead and button this thing up. And so now is the result of what we've done here. We're going to do the sound test. So I've got my decibel meter here, and we're going to play the exact same song at the exact same level for the exact same amount of time. When we did this last time, we were at level 7 on the volume. So that was, I hit from 0, I hit the up volume 7 times. And we got 105.2 decibels. So let's try it now with the speakers and the amp. Well, there we have it, 117.3. So it jumped up 12 decibels using that same song at the same distance. Microphone was pointed at the speakers. So, I mean, it's, you know, it's not ear piercingly different or anything like that, but it sounds really, really good. I think the true test of this is going to be once we get this thing on the freeway to hear what it sounds like. Well, it's got to be dark to see the LEDs, so let's go for a ride. All right, guys, so you heard it on the ride. Sounds amazing. I'm super happy with it. We're gonna have to just kind of keep putting it to the test. Of course, as I normally do, in about a month, I'm gonna do another review on this, just to let you know how it's going. You know, after the installation, after that, the excitement goes down. I wanna say, you know, and give a huge shout out to the folks over at Cerwin Vega for, you know, investing time and money into me to take a look at their offering. They're legends. What can you say? Amazing audio, amazing equipment, a bunch of great guys over there. So thank you to Cerwin Vega. And if you're looking to purchase some of the same equipment that I have or even more, they've got a great lineup of things, not only for motorcycles, but for boats and cars and trucks and all that kind of good stuff. Check them out at cerwinvega.com. And while you're checking out, throw in a discount code of Mike It Yourself, and you'll receive a good discount on those products as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up. If you enjoy my content, become a subscriber. I would love to have you as a member of my community. And until my next video post, I hope to see you in the win.